So I think I'm going to code for another 30 minutes and then I'm going to go hit the gym, programmer style. Programmers crush code and get some reps in before lunch. Crush code before lunch and get reps in at the gym, whatever. Go to the gym, exercise, keep my body healthy. Okay, so yeah, simulating failures while it's running. Writing tests that do that. I think I'm just going to manually do them. And then the other thing that I'm going to do is, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to manually do this. I'm going to increase the timeout on these tests. So I'll make this 30 seconds. And then I'm going to increase this up to 15 seconds on each of these. So we'll do the, doesn't call the onReady, no. Okay, put them back down to 4,000, and let's write a specific test for this. This is the acoustic version of the song. Leave these tests as they are, because they test what they test, and they do a good job of it, so don't mess with that. Okay, copy this test here. Now, what I'm going to test for here is that, okay, calls onReady, onConnectionError, and ends with connection false. When broker fails. Okay, we're going to run it for 20 seconds. So we'll change, rename this symbol to error called. What happened? And then here we'll go ready called. I saw a shooting star last night and thought of you. But it must have been a dream 'cause you're not here. So ready called. Okay, we expect that to be true. We expect ready called to be true. And we expect connected to be false. Okay, this is the only test it's going to run. It's going to run for 20 seconds. So let's just run it once by itself without touching the broker. You can see I got the broker running over here and over here next to, behind my head in the picture. So it's a 20-second test. Some of this behavior is just not going to have an automated test. Yep. Error called to be true. Yep. Ready called. Okay, so it just failed on the first one. Okay, anyway. Now let's just do this. Ready? Run the test. Okay, it's running. Kill the broker. And bring it down. Boom! So the broker is now down. Okay. Okay, so what happened here is that the topology command that I put in the constructor succeeded, and it was like, hey, it's all good, it's fine. And because it didn't issue any other commands when I brought the broker down, it never experienced an error. Okay, so basically the behavior of the client is that it'll only throw an error when it starts or when it does a command. Now, if it has any workers attached to it, we should bubble up the status from the worker. Oh man, this gets complicated then, because in that case we should move the debouncing out of the gRPC connection and up into the client, because multiple workers are going to be calling that handler, and so we're not locking access to it. So what our debouncer does is it basically locks access to that handler so that it, inside the context of that client, the channel, it'll only get called once for a failure, once for a came back up. I mean, really what we want to have here is, if you imagine, is like an edge, connected, disconnected. And then what can happen is it can go disconnected, connected, disconnected, connected, disconnected, connected. And so we've put a tolerance on it of 3 seconds so that we buffer that behavior, so that, if it fails, it needs to come back up for 3 seconds before we'll say, yep, it's come back up. That's pretty much what happens, yeah. Let me just check that as a hypothesis, because I want to make sure that I didn't do the same thing to the failure. That has to fail for 3 seconds. Set not ready, it gets called, and then it goes, yeah, it needs to be down for 3 seconds before it will say it's down. So it's got a 3 second window where it can recover. Same thing. And that's stateful. But if we now use the workers to report up to the client the state of the connection, then the buffering of that needs to be up in the client. Because the other issue about that is that if the workers fail, do people need to have handlers on the connection error for the worker? Maybe they do. Okay, if I lift it into the client and then I have it called, if the client issues a command that fails, then that'll trigger it. And then if a worker that's connected, if one or more workers that have been created from the client fail, that also triggers the same behavior on there, but should it also trigger behavior on the client? Yes, I can probably do that by allowing you to put a connection and ready handlers on the workers, and then triggering the client's handler off that. Okay, so actually I wouldn't need to change the code in here at all. This can stay the same. Yeah, okay, I put another level of buffering up in the client. Okay, so I'm pretty certain that this functionality works here. Most important thing, let's get some sounds happening. Who's someone that I really like on here? Let's go with WRLD World, guy from the Netherlands. Wrote most of his songs while he was in high school. Okay. Okay, so we're going to put it up here. Okay, so I think what we need to do then is we need to create a private method. It's not 100% clear to me how this works, but I've got kind of an idea. What? Ah, there we go. Doesn't like the name. No. Okay. Okay, a naive implementation first of all. onReady. So first of all, I'm just gonna wrap the I'm just going to wrap them with another function so that I can, it's basically like an interceptor. Remove declaration. Unused. Oh yeah, okay, it's cool. So, we'll go down here. So instead, we're going to pass this in, and we're going to have to give it the context. So we're going to pass it in like this. Okay, so use the lambda to make sure we got the right context for the class instance. Okay, so essentially the behavior should now be exactly the same, but I now have the opportunity and ability to intercept it at the client level, which means I can do things like wire the workers into this interceptor. So, let's go back to our tests and just make sure that it still works as advertised. Everything can be solved by another level of indirection. Save that, and then run the test. Okay. Should use some isolating headphones for this. I have some pretty good isolating headphones too. I'll use them in future. Wow, these tests taking a long time to run, man. How much is the timeout? 4 seconds, 4 seconds, 4 seconds, 4 seconds. It should only take... Done. Yeah, I called done there, I called done in there, I called done in there, and I called done in there, so... Oh, the broker is down. Genius! Dude. Yeah, they're all gonna fail. Stop that test run. Should take a total of 16 seconds to run these tests. Run. Otherwise it will take 30 seconds to time out for each one. Make it 10 seconds. The jest timeout by default is 5 seconds. Local toast. I'm pretty happy with that. Local toast. Okay, all my tests are passing, so my slight modification that I did has not broken anything. Okay, 2:05, so 25 minutes left. I need a countdown timer, man. That'd be cool. Okay, so it basically functions exactly the same right now. But what we want to do is now, when we create a worker, okay, so, oh, okay, so options here is of type Zeebe worker options and Zeebe client options. So what's going to happen here is that any on-connection handler that I put in for the oh man, does it actually merge the client options in? It does. Wow. Okay. Oh man, I've really fractured the architecture here. The client has an on-connection error. Oh man. So, wow. Okay, so the first thing that I need to do is I need to get rid of the, because it inherits the options that you created oh man, this is starting to be a mess. It inherits the client's options. So the first thing we're going to do is overwrite them with nothing, and then give you the opportunity to bring them in. Okay. Like that. Okay, so and then what we need to do after that is we need to put this. And then what we do is this here is just going to change the shape of the API, man. Okay, so for backwards compatibility, we're going to have to do this. We're going to have to say const onConnectionHandler equals no, sorry, onConnectionError. Backwards compatibility. Oh man, the curse of success. So we're going to keep the same API shape because I don't want to break any existing code. So if they passed one in explicitly, we're going to use that. If not, we're going to use that one. Why doesn't it like that? Right. So it's either connection handler or undefined. Okay, the issue here is that yeah, that fixed it. Okay, but we're still not going to use actually that. We're going to wrap it. And then the way we're going to wrap it is we're going to say const if there is an onConnection handler, then we're going to make a lambda where we're going to call this, we'll do this lambda like this. So we're going to call this dot underscore onConnectionError. So it's going to call this client wrapper method. Oh man, hacking. Okay, now we'll do it like this. Because we want to call that in any case. We're using the worker as like a notifier for the client. I think type guard works. So it knows that that's defined then. Disable that, thanks. Okay, so otherwise the client only knows there is a failure when it tries. To execute a command. This way, the top level handler on the client and we should be clear that it's the Zeebe client. Okay, and so then here, okay. We should bubble up the onReady as well, because the same thing, like that topology thing could fail, but then same thing. And then we've got to write a debounce into these methods, because they could be potentially called by lots of workers. So I mean, one thing about this is that okay. I wonder what happens if the broker is down and then we bring it up. Because if that topology command fails, then, and it's got infinite retry, we should expect it at some point to call the onReady handler. That was a pretty cool track. That's Discovery by World. Was it? Let's try it again. Yep. Let's add that to the list. It's good. Here's another track by World that is not on that playlist. Everything. I like it. Yeah, I got really into World and Conroe as well. Funky, man. Okay. Well, let's just try running like all the tests and make sure that they're all still working and I didn't inadvertently break something while I was doing this. That one there we can leave disconnected. So let's run all the tests. npm run test integration. So that's like this infinite retry that it has. So we would expect that the infinite retry would eventually, when the broker comes up, would call the onReady handler. And we're going to test that assumption after we make sure that I didn't break anything else. This is why having tests is so good. Like in a lot of my POCs that I do, you see I program with no tests, but in this library, man, this is like the core functionality of Zeebe clients. So you got like the Nest.js client, you got the Node client, and you've got the Ville de Montreal Work It client. They're all built on top of that, and so I can't afford to break anything in here. Something didn't pass. Does not throw when there is a broker by default. Okay. The constructor does not throw when there's no broker by default. And then one of the other things about this is I'm careful not to break backwards compatibility with the API, so I've had to make some changes to the shapes of things because of design decisions I made in the beginning that weren't very good, like taking like 4 or 5 different parameters to a constructor. And then I got to this point where I was like, well, I want to make the first one optional. So I set it to take null, but it means that you've got to put null in there. It's so dumb. I don't know who it was. Maybe Uncle Bob or someone said, you know, if you're using more than like 2, maximum 3 parameters, you should use an object. 100% agree with that, man. It was such a mistake. Anyway, I figured out a way around it. I made like an overloaded constructor that can take an object or the 5 parameters, and then I had to deal with it in the constructor code. I don't know if I added this to the playlist, but I'm adding it there now. Okay, so one of the tests failed. Let's have a look at which one it is. Async callback was not invoked within the 12 seconds from timeout specified by just set timeout error, and it's in... not that one, the one above. This one, Zeebe client unmocked. Does not throw when there's no broker by default. Okay, so what's happened here is that it comes in and then creates a client, and then it attempts to deploy a workflow. Oh, you wouldn't even need to attempt to deploy the workflow anymore. So I can see here obviously that I did need to trigger some kind of command to trigger the failure behavior. Does not throw when there is no broker by default. Okay, Zeebe client unmocked. So let's just go npm run test unmocked. No, that's an integration test. It needs a broker. Unmocked. Okay, and while that's coming up, let's get some conro happening. Young Canadian guy. It's written some cool stuff. The roaming road. Nah, remember you. Let's try that. Okay, it passed that time. It could have been, I don't know, race condition.
I still remember how it used to be, holding hands, running wild and free.
Oh man, there's nothing worse than a test that fails and then passes. It's good when they just fail all the time. Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. Let's have a look. Oh look, there's a 10-second timeout and a 2-second timeout, and then the whole overall timeout's 12 seconds, so let's make it 13 seconds. It does keep it alive. Alright. Now, let's run that test again with the new timing, and I think that it should pass every time because it's right on the boundary. I can see why, you know, if something was a little bit slow, that would fail. Allowing 12 seconds and then having 12 seconds of timeouts. Okay, so it looks like everything works, so now we want to debounce the... Oh no, I wanted to test whether... Oh yeah, whether the... Okay, the onReady spec. So let's go in here. It doesn't... No, so we're not going to test that. Calls the on connection, so let's get rid of this last test so that we keep it clean. Clean as you go.
We drew our names in the pavement, thinking about how we never changed. I still remember how it...
Okay, so we want to test this one here, right? Now we're allowing up to 10 seconds. I'm going to increase that to 20. And then increase this test here to 15 seconds. And then what we're going to do is we're going to stop the broker. And then we're going to run that test. Okay, and then we're going to DC up the broker while it's running. So it's failing right now. Yep. So we bring the broker up. And then as long as the broker comes up in time, this thing should connect. Stream removed. Retrying. Come on, the broker's come up. Yes! Okay. So that validates that if the broker is down and comes up, the onReady gets called. I probably called onConnectionError first. What that means is that in your application you're going to have an onConnectionError handler and it's going to get called before it was ready. So anyway, you'll have to deal with that.
I can hardly believe it. Never thought we would start this rolling stone. Don't know where I'm going, but I know that
Add this one to the playlist. It's quite cool. Okay, so now we need to debounce this thing in the client because now the workers are gonna let it know. We should really test that. So yeah, let's do a test for that. If we go to the Zeebe client and have a look at this underscore thing, it's the connected value of the channel.
I just wanna be me.
Oh no. Okay, so here's another edge case. The client doesn't connect. It does the topology fails. It calls the onConnectionError handler. It starts a worker. The worker connects. The worker's like, it's all good, it gets a connection. Now the client is also connected. The client's on-connected status is not going to change. Yes, it is because of the automated retry. Okay, so that's cool. No, okay, so here's the scenario. It starts up, it connects, then the broker fails. The client is not making any calls. Okay, as long as the client has automated retry, because its connected status won't get failed until it makes a call, at which point the automated retry will take care of it. Yeah. I mean, basically this thing doesn't throw, it's just going to have onConnectionError handlers. Having these things throw is really bad because your application just blows up because the broker connection failed, which could be anything. Transient network connections, broker actually going down, Kubernetes nodes being preempted and moved around. It's a thing. Okay, so now what we have is that in the client, if they specify an onConnection handler, then we're going to call it, and if they didn't, we're going to tap into it to call this upper one here. So we need to put the same kind of machine in here for the tolerance. Which means we should make the tolerance an option. Inject it down into the client, the gRPC client, and then use it up here as well. Let's close down these things so you don't need to see them. It's 2:30, and I said I'd go to the gym at 2:30. So, I think we're going to take a break. And we'll come back and debounce it after that. Also, it'll give me some time to think about it, because with that debouncing, I'm going to have the same kind of logic implemented in two different places. So, you know... Oh, this sounds pretty cool. Sounds like a party. Yeah, let's add this one. Cool. Dig it. Yeah, I mean, if you have the same code in two different places, you know, is it better to test it in one place and have like a machine, like a state machine? An edge detection state machine. And then we're gonna have to thread the Okay, so I think what there is to do right now is I'm going to walk away from my machine right now, and what I want to do is I want to have a checkpoint. Checked in, no code out, checkpoint, documented where I'm at. So I can't be... I'm going to forget everything when I go to the gym, man. Okay, so we'll uncomment these tests that we had commented out. This one here goes back to 4 seconds. This time that can go back to 10 seconds. Okay, so one last sanity check, run through everything, and then we're going to checkpoint. Use alpha 3. .21 dash alpha 3 for CI test. Add that. Okay, I'm not going to do it now because it'll trigger Husky, which will trigger more tests. So while that test is running, I'm going to go back to here, and here means over to my web browser, to GitHub, and we are going to update the status here. Okay. Okay, so I'm adding onConnection and onReady handlers per worker. The existing worker. This makes it easy for me to write the documentation at the end because I'm like writing it as I go, and then I'll just like fuse it together, distill it, whack it into the README and the changelog. In the constructor options. Options. Existing on connection trailing param will override one supplied in options to create worker. So we can just take this out in the create worker constructor options. Will inform the client if they detect a failed connection. So, unless okay, so really that makes it a little clearer to me, because what we're doing now is we put that get property of connected and reach through into the client thing, so now we just lift that into the client itself. And that, my friends, is why you use the law of Demeter and you don't let people reach through into internal implementations, because we are about to change that. Tests all passed, we're good to go. Checkpoint achieved. Okay. First thing is we're going to update the CI, circle CI thing. And then, how do I copy the link to this thing? Copy link. It's running Husky. Output. Okay, that worked good. So now, let's add all of these, and then say git commit m minus m whatever. That'll do. It's good. End of the playlist. Good time to stop. Okay, once this push goes through, I'm a bounce. Here we go. It's running the tasks. They're going to complain. Nope, it worked. If I refresh this Git view, it's done. Push to production, not to production, but to GitHub. Okay, that's a good time to stop, because the playlist has stopped and it's time to hit the gym.